night gallery. But yeah, like where she's blind, and then she takes this like miracle drug that restores her sight, but only for 24 hours, and then there's a blackout.
What? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, what an iconic image. I remember seeing her with like that bandage on her eye.
And you get some of that like signature Spielberg stuff because the sun starts to rise. So she gets to see a sunrise, and it's all like soft focus, like very Spielberg, you know, like that kind of, you know,
dreamy
magic hour kind of light.
That's so insane that he just like steps on, like he's so talented. He comes right out of the gate firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, when oh, by the way, this is the Total Recall Show. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And we're talking, the reason we're talking about Spielberg is we just saw The Fabelmans.
We were in the theater seeing it on Total Recall Business.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg's semi-autobiographical film. Waited till after his parents died before he made it, because he didn't want to embarrass them. He's embarrassing them posthumously.
Yeah, like you can hear them rolling in their graves.
Yeah,
it's like when the movie comes out, it's like Spielberg parent grave, like it just shows some
like Poltergeist or something. It like pops up.
Oh yeah, Duel.
Yeah, so like, you know, he's like doing with Duel, he's like doing like made for TV movies that look like movies. Yeah,
I remember seeing that and like being like, how did I miss this being like a theatrical thing?
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize it was on TV. It had been on television.
Yeah, I saw it fairly recently, just as like, okay, I need to get around to seeing this. I might have even seen it like after I saw this Spielberg documentary.
Yeah.
When Tarantino was recently interviewed by on Howard Stern, he said how like Spielberg's like the one guy who he thinks has like just this you know, God-given you know, cinematic talent that he just kind of like just knows it inside and out, and it just seems to come from nowhere. Now I guess he hasn't you know, heard about 10,000 hours or whatever, because it's like he put in his 10,000 hours when he was a little kid, so he shows up in Hollywood at age, you know, 19 or whatever, and is, you know, a master.
You're right, because he's ahead of the curve. Like, not every little kid had access to a camera and was putting his hours in from such a young age.
Yeah, it is kind of like he does have that jump on the competition, kind of, because it's like his dad was, you know, like a techie. He was like really, you know, clued in on high tech. He was, you know, working at various labs, working for GE, IBM. So like his dad was clued in on this stuff. So kind of like pretty early on got him hooked up with like a good camera and stuff, you know.
And you know what, his parents, like their personality types might seem like the perfect pair that would facilitate someone that's directing.
Yeah.
Like a techie with like an art, like a
right,
like
and
that combination.
I feel like that's like these like an unstated premise in his movie in Meet the Fablemans is, you know, that it's like here's the formula for me. It's half artist, half scientist, you know, and so you need that for film. You need it's an art and a science.
Oh, wow, look at that stunt.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
practical effects. The Fabelmans, I loved seeing that in the theater. What a great experience. Because the last flick we saw was Spielberg related was Ready Player One.
Okay, wow, that was a while ago. Yet, like they have like his films that he made when he was a kid. You know, they sort of remake them in the movie, and it's funny just because it's got like the lens flare and so like, you know, they're shot on Super 8 or probably just regular 8mm. Probably wasn't even Super 8, and then but they still have like these Spielberg flourishes.
Yes.
So it would be interesting to compare, see if there's as much like lens flare and haze and stuff. But I mean, his movies were pretty accomplished, and in that Spielberg documentary, you see. It's like he's doing like low budget special effects.
Oh yeah, with the poking the pinhole through the film.
Yeah,
for gunfire.
For gunfire, when we were watching it, and he had like the gunfire, and they were like, "How did you do it?" I was thinking, okay, here's how I would do it back then. You know, because I've worked with Super 8 and 16mm film
That's so
stock.
awesome.
And like, it's like, oh, what I would do is I'd you know, scratch. You know, I'd like, you know, scratch the emulsion off. or maybe take some like alcohol or some kind of chemical and kind of like spray it off or something. You can also draw directly on the film. Like that was another like form of animation where you like take a Sharpie and just draw. Like I did a little bit of that. Did a little bit of like animation like right on the film.
That's so cool. Editing machines too.
Yeah, because we were like drooling over all the the old technology, the splicing, the editing machines, the little mini moviola thing and stuff. And like I used all of that stuff. Like when I was taking film classes. And then we were talking about it, and I asked if you said you'd never used any of that stuff where you got like the tape and you pull the thing down and punch it and stuff, and like it makes sense because when I was taking those classes, they were bringing in digital equipment like it was probably the last year that they were at the school teaching Super 8 and 16 millimeter film and stuff because they switched like that lab where I did all that splicing a year later was like a digital lab.
Oh, that's awesome.
Seth Meyers, he said as he was learning that stuff, they were throwing the equipment away.
You're dumpster. You go dumpster dive. You're like, please. I bet that stuff's like worth $1 million now.
Because he was doing like a little bit of like editing and stuff with the projector where he'd like be playing it back and then stopping and rewinding, and I was like, oh, you're gonna break the belt. You're gonna snap the belt because like I broke some belt. Like the guy would have to come and be like, oh, you're breaking, because
Julie, you're breaking the belt again. You break two more, you out. Whenever he was going, zzz, zzz, you're like, don't burn that motor out. Don't burn that motor out, young Sammy.
That was the now defunct, the now no longer existent Pittsburgh filmmakers.
Okay.
If you ever,
I have heard of that.
Yeah. It was like before digital, it was like if you wanted to make any kind of movie in Pittsburgh, that's where you'd get the equipment, you'd take classes and stuff.
Yeah.
Now you just need your phone.
Your phone, like
De Palma.
Oh, we've
When I was watching this Spielberg documentary, I was watching like a bunch of director documentaries. So there was this, and then the De Palma documentary.
Oh, that's a great one.
And then the John Milius documentary.
I haven't not seen the Milius one. I gotta watch that one. When I watched this, I think this came out in like 2017. That was around the time I watched it. I haven't watched it since. Okay. And now that we've seen the Fabelmans, seeing those old movies, I'm like, he's really going like one for one on these old movies.
Yeah, when he was making like toilet paper mummies with his sisters, and then having like the dentist's scene pulling a tooth,
candy corn.
Yeah, with candy corn and ketchup.
That was awesome.
I mean, he was like when you read about these guys, like the film brats, that generation. It's like he was. Like those guys are all hugely successful, but he was like the king. Like his career was already off and running before any of these guys like really took off, and he was. And then by the time these guys' careers started taking off, he was just having huge, massive hits and stuff. Yeah.
The we had like, remember we mentioned we had in my family the camcorder. Mm-hmm. That's come up on the show a couple times. My dad trying to get rid of the black bars on Karate Kid 3.
See, I wish I had something like that. Like, I was such a snob about, like, digital versus film that, like, I should have just bought, like a digital video camera and just, like, started making movies. But I was like, no, it's got to be, it's got to be this really expensive,
Like, dude, I love where your head's at, brother.
Because then you get more mileage, you just get to make a bunch of movies, and then,
But, like, when I read about, like, these guys making those movies when they were younger, too, it's like, yeah, you got to have the equipment to... It's kind of like you're more focused or more... There's more on the line with the equipment. It's
that's
a little harder or something. Like,
yeah, you got to do a lot more prep. You gotta like know what you're doing, go in there with a plan, and then it's showtime, baby. Where like you can be a little bit like lazy and sleepy when you're doing video because it's like whatever. Okay.
But with film, it's like pressure's on.
Yeah, which makes you rise to the occasion.
Like it's just wild seeing like this behind the scenes stuff, and then like Hollywood Spielberg with the bouffant, big glasses, like
that was also funny hearing. This was on like I think it was a commentary track on Pulp Fiction, but like Tarantino was saying, like he realized like instead of shooting on 16 millimeter, he said for a student film, because he was showing like the part from there's like a talk to the camera part in Pulp Fiction that was like, I think was a deleted scene where like Mia comes down with a camcorder and starts filming.
I've never
John
seen
Travolta.
that scene.
Yeah, it's
Oh
like
my
it's like a
God.
cut scene she's filming, and she's asking him like, "Are you an Elvis guy or a Beatles guy?" You know, stuff like that.
Wow.
And like people are either Elvis guys or Beatles guys. They're not both. You know, they're never both and stuff.
That's interesting.
But he was saying like watching that footage, he realizes like to like a film student, if you film on video and then just have it, you know, transferred to 16 millimeter film or 35 millimeter film, it looks great. Like it looks really good. Like there's no reason to film on film, like to film a student film on film.
Okay.
Because 16 mil, like video blown up to 35 or video transferred to 16 mil looks indistinguishable from 16 millimeters.
Jeez.
So
That's
good because you know then you can save a bunch of money. You're not shooting like reams of
Rough.
16 mil and then trimming it down. You know.
I'm the I get red light fever and blow all the takes. I'm like
These Spielberg documentaries and stuff it was shocking to me that like at a certain point, like when it came time to make Raiders of the Lost Ark, no studio wanted Spielberg to direct it. They kept telling Lucas, we don't want Spielberg, because he had this reputation for going over budget. And it's like, okay, yeah, over budget, but then like your movie makes $1 zillion, you know?
Yeah, they're like, you figure he would get like a free pass after Jaws.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, this guy Jaws is like what, the first blockbuster?
Yeah, like invents the blockbuster. I guess they say that, but then now all this like Godfather stuff is saying Godfather was the first blockbuster. You know.
They're like, oh my God, our movies. It's like there's the line. It's not busting the block. It's like there's De Palma. They're talking about him creating that the Star Wars scroll.
Yeah, smart, because when you compare the old scroll to like the after De Palma scroll, it's like it's apples and oranges. Like it really did do a lot. There was that segment of it that was like Blowout. Like it was kind of cool seeing Blowout.
Yes.
Because he's like piecing the mystery. He's on his little like movie-ole thing,
yeah.
and he's like piecing the mystery together, and you know.
And watching it fall into place, and he has it timed up with his mom playing the piano.
Yeah.
And then he finally is like, oh shit, Seth Rogen's fucking my mom or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Seth Rogen, who's looking lean and mean, looking like a little cutie in that.
They got to make it so that you know you buy the idea of like his mom running off with him. Like if it was
like Freaks and Geeks, or like he didn't speak in his like his Rogenisms.
He was in his Green Hornet shape.
Yeah,
he was like ready to be in a superhero movie.
He was svelte. He had like 0% body fat. He's like,
yeah, he was working out with Kamal Nanjiani.
At some point, Paul Dano's got to be like, let's get this guy the fuck out of here.
Well, like I was wondering, like, because like we saw this movie having seen the Spielberg documentary and knew Spielberg's story that like his mom ran off with his dad's best friend and stuff. So I just wonder, like, people seeing this movie. It seems like so obvious from frame one that that's what's going to happen, but I just don't know if it's just because
we know this.
We know the outcome, so we're seeing the clues where somebody who's watching this who doesn't know anything about it is maybe taking the clues in subconsciously, and then when it all comes together, it's it's supposed to be like a shocker. Because it was like almost comical, where it's like, yeah. Get that guy out of the house. What? You know.
He's like...
it's funny because there was all this like sexual symbolism in it that seemed like comedic, where, okay, there's this scene, like she's playing the piano with her long nails, and one of like Spielberg's things, like his attention to detail is always great, and like sound and stuff.
Yeah.
So like the sound, like she's playing the piano and like you hear her like sort of lead press on nails kind of doing, and it's like this very subtle kind of thing, but it's like very cool and like a very specific detail. And then it becomes like a plot point where Seth Rogen, who plays his dad's best friend, is like, I'm gonna clip your nails, and like when he takes out his clipper, he's like holding it in front of his groin, you know, if like
Right.
if they're like hitting you over the head with it, he's like, I'm gonna clip those nails, get over here, and then he's like, hold her down, I'm gonna clip, you know,
It's like,
and then
he's like, are you sure my parents are dead?
and then
Make sure they're dead before we shoot this.
and then his mom's like climbing a tree, and
Oh,
Seth
yeah.
Rogen's shaking, and she's like, whoa, like riding this pole, you know, whoa, rocking back and forth, go, like laughing as Seth Rogen's like rocking. It's like
he got cuckold Paul Dano off the side. He's like, oh no, like he's like, he's like, oh.
the casting was good because like Paul Dano always plays creeps. And then Seth Rogen is like has kind of like a fun image. He seems like a fun guy to hang around with. So even though Paul Dano, like Spielberg's dad, seems like the nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
He's like who you would want to have for your dad and stuff. So it's like, you know, oh man, why would she, you know, leave this guy or whatever? But it's like you get Paul Dano in there, and it's like, okay, you know, there's a little carryover from like some of his other.
Perfect.
You know, it's another thing. Like it made me realize how much time's passed because like the last movie with Paul Dano that made a big impression on me. I mean, other than Batman or whatever, but was when he played young Brian Wilson. So it's like he goes from playing young teenage Brian Wilson to playing Steven Spielberg's dad.
I
you
know,
that's a jump. You know, some time has passed.
You're right. Having Paul Dano in there gives it like a little patina of creep that you can't put your finger on.
Yeah, because everything he's doing is great and stuff. But yeah, he's got that. You know, and that's like how Paul Dano got his start, was sort of playing creeps.
He was got directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Great performance in There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him was in, I think it was a movie called The Ballad of Jack and Rose, which also had Daniel Day-Lewis.
I haven't seen that one.
It's really good, but he was like the creepy stepbrother in that, and he was pretty young. I think that might have been like his first role.
Okay.
The creepy stepbrother. So that was my introduction to Paul Dano. So like, just creep is like, you know.
He was kind of he's playing a weirdo. I think he was in that Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz movie Night and Day.
Okay.
He had like a pretty big like side role in that. Mm-hmm. And he, once again, playing like an offbeat weirdo.
And speaking of Paul Thomas Anderson, like, this movie made me think of Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
And it just felt kind of, you know, it had sort of a similar aged protagonist, has sort of like a film world kind of, you know, bent to it, Hollywood kind of bent to it. But it was not a favorable comparison. Like, I feel like Licorice Pizza ran circles around this movie. Like, I liked this movie. I thought it was good. But it kind of... I feel like it lacked a little bit of depth. Spielberg, I think, was hampered by the fact that it was
his parents.
It was his parent, but it was like his true story and his real life. And so he does take liberties. He does do... But I feel like if this weren't... If he weren't trying to do sort of like a semi-autobio kind of thing, he might have been able to push it in some, like, I would have liked to have seen more of like a relationship between Sam, who's the Steven Spielberg character, and Uncle Benny. You know, like, because
that left some wanting.
Yeah, because the betrayal didn't feel as deep. Because and when he tries to like buy him the camera and stuff, it didn't feel like they had enough of a relationship for there to be a betrayal, you know. And I feel like maybe that was just because in real life they weren't that close or whatever. But I feel like the movie wanted that. The movie wanted to explore more.
And once again, we could make those leaps because we know the backstory going into. So it's like, how were folks that didn't really know much of the behind the scenes action left feeling like
I would have liked, so, like, and I know it's largely from Sam's point of view, but I would have liked some more scenes with Spielberg's mom and Uncle Benny. You know, like, it would have been interesting to see more, because it is like he's like handling things very gently because it's his own story, but I think it would have been a better movie if he would have and also his mom tells him, like, nothing happened. You know, whatever you think,
Yeah.
and like whether we believe her or not, that's up for grabs too. But he was kind of like, I think, handling the situation very
Yeah.
delicately and very gently in a way that makes sense when you're telling your own story and like your sisters are still alive and
course.
stuff, but doesn't really make sense when you're trying to make a movie. You know, trying to like, you know, punch the audience in the gut a little bit. You know?
You're right. Like he could have gone. I think that he might have needed to go further with this, and he held back a little bit.
It's funny, like in this Spielberg documentary, they're showing like, because like he has to stitch together a movie. I keep wanting to call it a video, but he has to stitch together a movie of this camping trip that his family went on.
I love that.
And then he sees like his mom holding hands with Uncle Benny and stuff, who's Uncle Bernie in real life, and we just saw like the sort of fake version where it's Paul Dano and Seth Rogen. Now we're seeing the real version. And it's like, Steven Spielberg's dad and his best friend look identical. They look 100% identical, except Uncle Bernie is wearing sunglasses. And it's like, oh, that guy's a nerd, and that guy's cool. You know, that's like all it is. You know?
And then once again in the movie too, Spielberg casts like he's like, here's me as a child, the George Lucas move.
Right? Yeah. It's like Timothy Chalamet was like a little too old to play young Spielberg, so he got the kid that he got to play himself.
Great performance.
Yeah, he was really good, but he looks like a young Ezra Koenig from
Vampire
Weekend. So yeah, he got this like covered this teen heartthrob to play himself.
George Lucas is like, Mark Hamill is me. He's like,
right. Yeah. George Lucas hires this like toothpaste commercial model to play himself, and yeah. But hey, it's your movie.
Yeah.
You get to do that. That's like the new Sandman TV show. It's like Neil Gaiman found like a fashion model version of himself to play, his sort of stand-in character.
Like, the reality of Spielberg's family situation, I'm confused by it because, like, did they handle it completely differently?
That's what I wondered because my understanding of the story, and I feel like it's reinforced in this documentary, my understanding of the story was that when his parents were splitting up, his dad was telling them we're splitting up, and his dad made it sound like it was his idea. Yeah. He was the reason why. And Spielberg spent a big part of his life resenting his dad. He was estranged from his dad because he's like, why are you tearing this family apart? What he later found out was that they were breaking up because his mom was running off with his dad's best friend, and he didn't, and that his dad was trying to protect everybody. Like, he didn't want his kids hating their mother, so he would rather they hate him, and so and so that was my understanding of it.
But like
in the movie,
within the last couple of years, or even within the last 2 or 3, apparently his story seems to have changed.
Well, and so I don't know, because that's what I was seeing in the media, in interviews and stuff surrounding this movie. His story is hewing closer to what the movie is, because in the movie he. In Blowout, he's editing this video, sees the evidence, and realizes, oh, my mom's cheating on my dad. She's in love with his best friend, and so he creates the home movie to show everybody that's this happy home movie, and then he creates this secret cut, this cutting room floor version, which kind of reminds me of the Total Recall show cutting room floor.
Oh yeah.
And so he shows his mom this version this love cut that he stitched together of all the footage of her making eyes at Uncle Benny and holding hands with him. And so...
There's a funny love cut where it's they're doing completely over the top lewd things. Yeah. Even worse.
Right.
He's like, how did we not see this?
Well, yeah, when he's got his nail clippers in front of his crotch, or when he's shaking the tree and she's going, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! on this tree. I'm like, what's next? Like, are they going to go in like a canoe ride in a tunnel together or something? Like, what's coming up next?
He's like, he has like a fire hose and
exactly. Yeah.
But like, yeah, though.
Like that footage they would have of like birds taking shits on people's faces, like.
Or there's like the space shuttle like taking off. Or there's like.
Right. Exactly.
But like,
so
while that's happening, Paul Dano's like, he's like.
Watching this, I thought, he's doing wish fulfillment because it's like he finds out in the movie, he finds out that his mom's cheating on his dad, and then he confronts his mom with it, shows her the movie,
Great scene.
And says, like, I'll keep your secret, I'm not going to tell anything, but, whatever. And, like, yeah, I was kind of like, oh, he's reinventing history. And then I started doing some reading, and that's the story he's telling in interviews. And it sounds like what he's saying is that he was, like, aware of it, but it was kind of like, it's kind of like psychologically shielding himself. Like, it was like he was aware but wouldn't admit it to himself.
Okay.
So, like, maybe he knew, and he knew his mom's secret, but he couldn't fully accept it or couldn't, and then, yeah, and when he was telling the story of his dad crying and him calling him a crybaby, which was like this, like that his dad was crying as he's telling them that they're breaking up, and then he yells at him and calls him crybaby, and then uses that scene in Close Encounters.
Yeah.
It sounds like in his telling, it's kind of separated into two separate moments where it was just like a separate moment where he saw his mom and his dad crying, and he calls him a crybaby. And so I don't like. Again, memory is a funny thing.
Definitely.
The more you remember things, the more you are retelling yourself the memory, and the more this memory can change. So who knows what the truth is? But I mean,
yeah, it's like if you knew that, why would you not talk to him for 50 years?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but again, it's complicated. He's protecting himself, but also maybe like a less flattering version is that he, was angry at his dad for being, kind of like a wimp or what, like for
letting Benny
cuckold him, and for not standing up and for crying, like, hey, be a man, like, it's kind of that's something you wouldn't be proud to admit, that like, oh yeah, I was mad at my dad because he wasn't enough of a man. He didn't, instead of saying like, oh, I'm mad at my dad because he, broke up our family.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know what I mean? It's
oh yeah.
So I know it's complicated.
He's like,
it's Spielberg's story to tell and everything, but
yeah,
I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit.
A little bit too,
yeah.
And he's like, Dad, you let Uncle Benny pull a John Denver on you.
Yeah, it was very, if he had made this earlier in his career, he could have had John Denver and Martin Cove playing the father and uncle.
Martin Cove's like hanging around the cabin. And John Denver's like, or no, it would be like Martin Cove would be.
Yeah,
he'd be like, "Oh no."
Yeah, Martin Cove as Steven Spielberg's dad.
Here's Uncle Benny. He's a musician.
When they're going to the movies, and Spielberg is like, they're going to see The Greatest Show on Earth.
Yeah.
And Spielberg's kind of like, oh, I don't know, I'm scared. And then his dad's explaining to him like persistence of vision and all this kind of stuff. It was kind of like, this is a bit of a stretch. I'll bet. I highly doubt that this is the first time Steven Spielberg went to the movies, and I doubt that he's like, I don't understand movies. Dad, explain movies.
When we went to the movies, you got down and explained persistence of vision to me. You had to.
I mean, I understand how it works thematically, and that this movie's going to make a big impression on him, and that his dad, and explaining how his dad's like a scientist kind of guy, and it's breaking everything down.
He was like, he gets down on one knee, he's like, son, E equals MC squared.
It sounds like his dad invented the personal computer too.
It does.
From this movie. And like, I wonder how much of that is like myth making, and how much of that. I mean, it sounds kind of
cool.
That he was he was there. He was there when all that stuff was happening.
He's like, I'm working on this computer. It's the entertainment television computer, also called the ET.
You know what else? You know what else is kind of like, you get to have some revenge in cinema,
Yeah.
And so like there was that guy who bullies him, and then his character within the movie makes a movie that makes this guy look like an idiot, and it's like revenge via cinema, but then this movie itself is kind of revenge because it's like the way he portrays Uncle Benny is like, oh, his dad, Paul Dano is this scientific super whiz, and he's just taking dumb old Uncle Benny with him everywhere he goes, and like Uncle Benny cannot pull his own weight, and the only reason he has a career in these companies is because his dad's covering his ass. Like, that's pretty nice revenge to have on the guy who broke up your parents' marriage.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna get you. He's like, you screw my wife. I'm gonna get you a job at this company.
And
Payback's a bitch.
He could have hired, an actor, like a super stud for like the actor, but it's like he went like the bare minimum for like. It's like he had to get somebody that his mom could credibly run off with, but he wasn't going to overdo it. He wasn't going to get like Tom Cruise or somebody. Yeah, it might have been a better movie if he had made Uncle Benny like fleshed out the character a little more and made the movie a little more sympathetic to Uncle Benny. That would have been a more interesting movie. But that's a tough thing to do. Like, personally, like, if this, like, I'm sure Uncle Benny, and again, it's his mom's, it's his mom's husband. Like, his mom, like, they were married for the rest of their lives, and they started a restaurant. So he's still his stepfather or whatever, but I'm sure he fucking hates him.
Oh yeah. Like,
you don't get over that kind of stuff. You can maybe say that you got over it.
Is Uncle Benny still alive? I think.
I don't know. Is he?
I'm not sure. Like,
that would be cool if like the last man standing is Uncle Benny. That's the guy who gets to see this movie. Like, he's like, I'm not waiting until Uncle Benny's dead. He's like,
he does the scene where Uncle Benny's like on the toilet. He's like, gives him like explosive chronic diarrhea. He's like, Benny's on the toilet again.
Yeah, I guess Uncle Benny got out easy.
He did get off easy. He's like, they're like, Benny. He's like at the dinner table, like eating his own boogers and stuff.
Yeah, 1941. It's like Spielberg's only flop. Like, anytime anybody like criticizes any of these like film brat guys for like playing it safe or going for like, they all at certain times had their movie where they just stretched a little too far and then the movie flopped, and then it's like, okay, I'm only making surefire hits. Like De Palma had that moment, and Spielberg had it with 1941.
I watched it not too long ago. I still like watching that.
I've never seen it. It's one of those.
We should watch that.
We'll watch that. That's it has I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark recently. There's no way that bag of sand weighs as much as a gold idol. Like, he takes sand out. He needs to be putting sand in. He needs to show up with like a big bag to
I always thought that he's like, that idol looks like it weighs like 50 pounds.
Exactly. Yeah, this pure gold statue. And then is Spielberg involved in the new Indiana Jones, or is that like another like new Lucasfilm kind of thing where it's all like the next generation?
He's the executive producer.
Okay.
So he has a pretty big hand in it.
Is Lucas involved at all?
That I'm not sure.
Have they just shut Lucas out of Lucasfilm altogether? Like, they bought that thing. I've seen this before where somebody like, buys somebody's childhood home from them and then tells them a whole story of how, oh yeah, we fell in love with your home and we're going to take good care of it. And then as soon as the deal's done, they demolish it and build some monstrosity. Like, I feel like that was the deal that happened with Lucas and
Lucasfilm.
Yeah, when he sold it to Disney.
They're like,
I think they told him a whole story of how they're going to honor his vision and bring him in, as much as he wants on stuff, and then boom.
Well, they have a sign up that says, "Don't let this man on the premises." It's just a picture. There's no doesn't say who it is. I know Spielberg is, and like all the classic producers.
Okay.
And James Mangold is directing it.
James Mangold. Okay. He did. What are his
Logan?
bona fides? Oh, okay. That was a good one.
I haven't seen Logan.
Logan's good. Yeah, that's one of the better like superhero movies. Like, if you're putting together your list of like the great superhero movies, that's definitely one of them.
Really, I think James Mangold did Copland with Stallone.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So he's got a nice little filmography, and
that's the one with Robert De Niro too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. With you blew it.
You blew it. He's like, Stallone's like, I'm gonna have a couple of cheat days and gain a little weight for this movie.
Now, when like at the end of the movie, like, so that's the other thing. Like, so I thought that, so seeing how young Spielberg finds out his mother was cheating and then talks to her about it and stuff. I thought, oh, okay, this is like, we're in sort of wish fulfillment. He's like telling the story of his childhood and how he wished things would have went, or wished the way he would have handled it. So then at the end, he's living with his dad. Like, the family's kind of broken up. His sisters are living with his mom. He's living with his dad in California. And I thought, like, oh, that's wish fulfillment. He wishes he would have gone with his dad instead of with his mom.
Point.
And things. But then, like, reading about it, it's like, no, he did go with his dad.
I didn't know that either. I thought, yeah, it's like he's trying to make right through the movie.
Yeah, exactly. But no, he did. So, obviously, he must, like, these, you know, he must have had some sense of things. I mean, I assume also it's like, he wants to be a director. He wants to go to Hollywood. His dad's living in California. He's going to go live with him. And then he goes to, like, you know, whatever the movie studio is. I forget.
I can't remember which.
Yeah. But he goes, and then he meets Greg Grunberg.
Greg Grunberg. And you know what? That's hilarious.
From the J.J. Abrams verse.
Yeah, I was like...
And J.J. Abrams is, you know, Spielberg's protege.
So you gotta feel that, like, that was a symbolic casting, having, like... Because J.J. Abrams puts Greg Grunberg in, like, every movie he does.
Yeah, he flies an X-Wing and stuff.
Yeah.
In the Star Wars movies. And then he says, how would you like to meet the greatest filmmaker of all time? So he goes in, and it's like, who's he going to meet? Who's it going to be? Who's he going to meet? And I thought it was going to be Hitchcock. And when they go in the waiting room, and there's the woman that's in the waiting room looks exactly like Pat Hitchcock. Like, he looks like Alfred Hitchcock's daughter.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, oh, is Alfred Hitchcock's daughter playing Alfred Hitchcock's wife?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, wait a moment, and then he's going to go meet Alfred Hitchcock. But I guess she just looked like her because he doesn't go in to meet Hitchcock. He goes in to meet John Ford,
played by David Lynch.
Yeah, really great. Like, yeah,
I still think about this movie.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about it ever since we saw it, and like that's the best cigar puffing maybe in a movie.
Yeah,
and like talk about like just letting it soak. He was just like,
yeah. And he's given Spielberg his big advice, and it's like, low horizon, that's interesting. High horizon, that's interesting. Horizon in the middle, that's boring. Now get the fuck out of my office.
That's the best. It's like
it's good advice. It's good advice, and I kind of did take it to heart.
Me too.
Like after we saw that movie and stuff, and I'm like drawing and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, better not put that horizon in the. Of course, like you put the horizon in the middle if you want to kind of, bore the kind of in between moments, in between the exciting parts.
If I was drawing something, that my instinct would be it's like to be the most boring.
Yeah,
I gotta fight my instincts.
That was a really great scene. And then like the last shot of the movie, he's like kind of walking away, in this studio environment, and then like the camera kind of like pops for a second, like it kind of like gets like someone bumped into it or something for a second.
Two things with that. One was like Spielberg's like, yep, it's me directing. That's my advice. I gotta fix the horizon. And the other was that the tone of that scene was off. I was waiting for it to go dab 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 dab. That's all, folks. Or what?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Looney Tunes.
I mean, I liked it, and it seemed like a little flourish, like like to remind you of like sort of the author that's remind you that of the guy behind the camera, and and to sort of tie it back in with those home movies.
Yeah,
so like I thought it was nice. I don't know how he came up with that. I don't know if that's something like the Indiana Jones gunfight where it's like it was just an improvisation. Harrison Ford pulls out his gun, and then they're like, okay, we're using that. So I don't know if like he bumped the camera, and then he's like, what, we got to do a shot where I bumped the camera. You know what I mean?
Oh, like in the moment kind of.
Yeah, I wonder, but it was a nice little way to kind of this very personal movie that he made.
I like that. He's like, it's me behind the camera. Mm-hmm. He's like, I took the advice. I got to remember John Ford's advice, like shooting this movie. I've been thinking about that movie just a lot. Mm-hmm. I really have, like, just good spot on casting, great performances. Spielberg is in this phase of his career. I'm glad, like, I used to be on where I was like knew everything he was up to, but ever since kind of like Tintin on, I love Tintin, but like his movies have been sneaking up on me where I don't know what he's making until it's basically in the theater.
Yeah.
So
I was glad to see this, and I enjoyed it a lot too. Just like I just kind of wish there was like a little more meat on the bones, just a little more meat on there, and yeah, like if Licorice Pizza didn't exist, because I was kind of like and stuff, and it's like I kept thinking of Licorice Pizza, and like the shadow of that kind of loomed over. Again, it's like
so
apples and
good.
oranges. You can't like it's the arts. Everybody's doing their thing, but it's like this like he could have given this movie like a little bit of a nudge into like greatness, and it's just he's just I felt like he was holding back a little bit. He's got to do it, but it's like he had to make this movie, and he made it, and it was really good. But yeah, it's like
if you had just given it story over.
Well, it's another thing. Like sometimes if you have a script or an idea that's too good, sometimes that works against it too, because sometimes the best films, the best like works of art come out of when you don't quite have everything in your pocket, and so then you get super terrified while you're working on it, and you start doing some magical stuff. You start doing some amazing stuff. And I feel like he had this whole thing so down and so figured out that there wasn't a lot of room left for magic,
Yeah. He'd been working on this movie his whole life, so
Michelle Williams was really great in it. And it's like it was making me think of another movie she was in, Blue Valentine. Another kind of like doomed relationship, doomed marriage kind of.
I haven't seen that one. I heard it was really good.
It's really good, but it was a nice, they're nice little bookends.
Interesting. You know what? I think the Fabelmans would be good on a double bill with Licorice Pizza.
I think so. I just
or is Licorice Pizza more on a double bill with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, that would be a good triple
bill.
Yeah, be like a triple feature. It's tough making a movie like that because even kind of like holding back and treating the story very tastefully and very gently, he's still setting his parents up for ridicule. Your mom's running around behind your dad's back. Oh, what the fuck's up with that? And it's like, oh, your dad, he's sucking his thumb while Seth Rogen's fucking your mom in the corner.
Wow. Yeah. He's like, oh, jeez, oh no.
Yeah, and then your stepfather's a piece of shit. He's a homewrecker. Your stepfather's a homewrecker. So it's like
your homewrecking stepfather's still running around Hollywood.
And he talks about like, oh, I showed this movie to my sisters, and I involved them in like various stages of the process, and they were all happy about it. But it is still kind of like, oh, this is a very that kind of stuff's tough. Like I've never done anything autobiographical or semi-autobiographical myself, and that's part of it. I think like you're really laying it all out there. You're really making yourself vulnerable, and you can create something really amazing and really great that way. It's just like
who needs that
in your life? Yeah, who needs that agita? And then who needs, hearing about it from,
That's the other thing.
Because, Benny's got I don't know if his mom and Uncle Benny had any kids together or anything, but, like, Benny's got a family, too,
During the Spielberg documentary, he's all, like, he's at his mansion in the country, like, in these clips, and he's like, they're like, oh, Uncle Benny? He's like, I don't talk to that asshole. He's like, we don't talk to that dickhead. He's like, he says it just in a matter of fact. But, yeah, but like, I mean, who, be it me to like tell Spielberg what to fucking make.
Right, sure.
But like, I'm like, maybe don't make this fucking movie. It's like,
I mean, I'm glad he did. And when you're an artist, it's like, art is number one, and it's all, it's all grist for the mill. And like, and even like, it's even stated within the movie. Like, I really like that conversation with Judd Hirsch, who plays his uncle. And again, like...
Great performance.
Yeah, great performance. We saw Angela Bassett in Black Panther giving an Oscar winning performance. Judd Hirsch was giving an Oscar, an Oscar-worthy
Best
performance.
Supporting actor?
Yeah, his was great. And like all the stuff he's talking about is like, yeah, when you're in the arts or in showbiz, it's like, the art is your god, and it's like running away to join the circus. And you got to be tough, and all this stuff. And that scene was also cool, seeing all the little posters and things
Love
that he has in the background
posters.
from different movies. And it's like, oh, okay, we're seeing, Spielberg's inspirations and stuff. And it all makes sense. And one of them, like, Ben-Hur, and then one of them is El Cid, who, like that was like a Charlton Heston movie on Cartoons Kayfabe, when we were interviewing Mike Mignola, he was talking about that being like his favorite movie. And it, like, I got it on VHS and was watching it. It's this very lush, beautiful, kind of makes you think of like the sort of early scenes in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh yeah,
the Coppola one where he's kind of.
I love the line from Judd Hirsch's scene where he was talking about like the artistry of putting your head in a lion's mouth.
Right.
And I can't remember. He said one of them's balls, and what's the artistry? He's like, the artistry is.
Yes, sticking your head in a lion's mouth is balls, and then not getting your head eaten is art. Yeah.
I love that.
The other thing with Spielberg, he's just, again, he makes movies as easy as breathing. He knows it inside out. And so it's like there's a million great little scenes within the thing. Just one of the things, if you're amazing like that, if you have all this technique, sometimes you don't maybe work as hard on like some of the other aspects, because you can like kind of pull stuff out and make it work. So like, I don't know. There's
maybe
like
you rest on your laurels a little bit.
There are like less talented filmmakers who've made better movies than this, or some of Spielberg's best. You can put next to anybody else's best, like his best stuff. Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like there's these movies you can just kind of put up against anything. Yeah.
Like some of the shots in this were great, like him shooting that toy train and like
the toy train was great, and seeing that Greatest Show on Earth, seeing it on a big screen,
that was cool,
and seeing how it's very obviously like a model train, and then when he's doing, but I mean the scene and the effect is still really intense and effective, and sort of seeing it through his eyes. But then when he like recreates it with his train set at home, it's kind of believable.
We had the video camera and we would do movies. I gotta find some of these movies. We did, like, I was obsessed with, like, just because I'm a nut job. There would be scenes like from like Black Rain or different movies where somebody would run out in front of a car and jump. So we wanted to recreate that with like the riding one.
Oh man, I hope everybody's got all their toes.
We do have all the toes. We would like my brother was driving it, and we would do you'd roll in front of it, and then very dangerous. But and then we would do like.
So Matt, I want to see your version of Fabelmans. Meet the Zeolis or whatever.
They'll I'm gonna put my parents
over a barrel. Embarrass your parents.
I'm like, I get agita or whatever. Like,
you can't go to the premiere. Like you can't watch the movie. You can't look at social media, and you can't ever talk to your family again.
I'm like, check. Like, we have when we do a Total Recall production, we show up at like a fucking theater.
His sisters were great too, because like he has to sort of show them at various ages. So it's like, okay, one of them's gonna have horn rimmed glasses.
Oh yeah.
So you can't tell the swapping out of one actress for another when they get older.
Yeah, like same with Sammy.
Mm-hmm. Meet the Fablemans.
It was a great flick.
Yeah.
Spielberg keep making movies.
Keep making movies, and I'm only holding him to a high standard because like he's earned that. He's a master, and so that's just how it goes. You hold the masters to a higher standard.
I can't wait to see what he's doing next.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And his production, Indiana Jones.
So I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life, The King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And we'll see you at the movies.
We'll see you at the movies.
Because Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert are both dead. So that sign-off is up for grabs.
Yeah, we went and I trademarked that at the patent office. So.
Now that Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert are dead, we can make our semi-fictional movie about their life. Yeah.